So I think we are on time now, so we can start. So hello everyone, my name is Himanshu Gehlot, and I am working with Programmers.io from last 3 years. And today I am going to take the session on opcodes. On last session, we discussed about file handling opcodes, and today we will look into some other useful opcodes that are most commonly used. So let's move forward with our first slide. So in today's session, we're going to discuss about arithmetic opcodes, that is add for addition, sub for subtraction, mult for multiplication, div for division, MVR opcode to move the remainder after the div opcode. SQRT means square root, so we can find out the square root of any number. Then we will discuss about the string opcodes, where we'll discuss about scan, subst, cat, check, checkr, exilate, move, etc. Then we will discuss about subroutine opcodes. So we'll discuss about what is subroutine and what are the subroutine opcodes are there, like execute subroutine, begin subroutine, end subroutine, initialize subroutine, and leave subroutine. Then we will move forward with opcode extenders, where we'll see the extenders like H for half adjust, E for error handling, and P for padding. And then we will discuss about some other useful opcodes like clear, reset, test, etc. So our first slide is for the arithmetic opcodes. So there are mainly 6 opcodes are there in arithmetic opcodes. First is add. So basically add opcode is used to add two numbers. Similarly, the sub opcode, it will be used to subtract any two numbers. Mult opcode will be used to multiply any two numbers, and division will divide the two numbers. MVR opcode means the move remainder. So it is used just after the div opcode. So whenever we divide two numbers and we found any remainder, so we can move that remainder into a variable using the MVR opcode. The last one is SQRT, that is to find square root of any number. So now let's see all these 6 arithmetic opcodes using an example. So let's move forward with our first example. So this is the modification log where we write when the program is created, who created the program, and we can mention the modification log, who changed the program, which developer changed the program, and on which date it has been changed. So here you can see we have mentioned a comment variable declaration where we have mentioned 3 variables, num1 of 5 integer, num2 also of 5 integer, and the result variable with the 10 integer value. Now start with our first opcode, that is add opcode. So what we are doing in add opcode, first we are initializing the value of num1 variable using the eval opcode and setting the num1 value as 5. In the next line, we are initializing the num2 value as 10 using the same eval opcode. Now on line number 32, let me press F. By using F4, you can prompt that particular line. So in the operation opcode, we have mentioned the add opcode here. In the factor 1, we have given our first variable, that is num1. In factor 2, we have given our second variable, that is num2. And the result, we have given the result variable. So what this will do? The result will store the addition of num1 plus num2. You can see here, it will work like this. Result equal to num1 plus num2. So in our case, num1 is 5 and the value of num2 is 10. So it will add 5 and 10 and store 15 in the result variable. Add opcode can be used in one more way where we don't have to specify the factor 1 field. If I just prompt here, you can see I didn't mention the factor 1 value. What I have done, I have just mentioned the factor 2 value here and the result field here. So in that case, how the add opcode will work? So in this case, the value will be stored in num2 variable because it is declared in the result field, and the addition will be performed by num2 plus num1. So we will add both two numbers and we'll store the result in num2 variable. So using this kind of operation, you can do the add. You can also mention the factor 1, factor 2, and you can also mention the factor 2 with the result field. Both will give you the addition of two numbers. Next is sub opcode. It is just similar to add opcode. We are just replacing the add with the sub here. So similarly, we have initialized the value of num1 with the 10 and the num2 value as 5. So now what sub opcode will do? It will just subtract num2 value from num1 value and store the result into the result variable. So it will work something like this: result equal to num1 minus num2. So the subtraction of both the numbers will store in the result field. So this is how the sub opcode will work. Here also we have not mentioned the factor 1 value. So in this case, we have mentioned the num1 in the result field. So it will work something like this: num1 equal to num1 minus num2. The result field will come first, then the factor 2 value will be subtracted from that result field. So the num1 minus num2 will be stored into the num1, and we are displaying it using the DSPLY opcode. Moving forward, the next opcode is mult opcode. So mult opcode will be used to multiply any two numbers. So similarly, we have declared two variables here, num1 and num2. Num1 as 10 and num2 as 5. So in the mult opcode, we have specified the opcode in operation. Factor 1, we have given our first value, and factor 2, we have given our second value. And the result field, we have given our variable as result. So now what mult will do? It will just multiply the num1 value with num2 value. So that is 10 into 5. So 10 into 5, 50 will be stored into the result field. Similarly, we can skip the factor 1 value here. So if you skip the factor 1 value from here, then the num1 will be multiplied with num2, that is the result field, and the result will be stored in this variable, that is num2. Moving forward, our next opcode is div opcode. So similarly, it will be used to divide any two numbers. So we have declared our first variable as 10, second variable as 5. Now we are using the div opcode here. So what it will be do? It will just divide num1 by num2. So it will just divide num1 divided by num2. So it will give 10 divided by 5. The value is 2. So it will be stored into the result field. Similarly, we can skip the factor 1 value here. So here also num1 value will be divided by num2 value, and the value will be stored into the num1 field. The next is MVR opcode. When you use div opcode and we get any kind of remainder there, so we can store that remainder into a result field. So how we can do that? Let's see with the example. We have declared our first variable num1 as 11 and num2 as 5. So when we will use div opcode, it will divide num1 by num2. So the 11 will be divided by 5. So the result field will be 2. But what we are doing here, we are just moving the remainder. So in our case, remainder is 1. So that one remainder will be stored into the result field, and we are displaying the result here. This is how the MVR opcode will be used. MVR opcode cannot be used without div opcode. So if you want to use MVR opcode, just before you have to use the div opcode, unless the program will give you a compilation error. The next opcode is square root opcode. So it will just simply do the square root of any number. So the first number is 64 and the second number is 81. So what we are doing? We have just mentioned the SQRT opcode in our operation opcode. In factor 2, we have given the variable which we want a square root, and the result will be stored into the result variable. So in our case, 64, so square root of 64 will be stored into the result field. Similarly, the square root of 81 will be stored into this result field as 9. So let's put this program into debug and see how this will work. So we'll just copy this program. To put this program to debug, again, we will use strtbg command. We'll press F4. We'll just press the program name. We'll give our library, set the production file to yes, and OPM source level debug to yes. Let's set the breakpoint at line number 1 and come out of it. And now just simply call it by taking option C at OPT. So I'm calling this program. Press F10 to go to the next step. So here we have declared two variables, value as 5 and 10. So if you want to see these values, we just have to put the cursor just below the variable and just press F11. So you can see, we can see the num1 value as 5, num2 value as 10. So now what add opcode will do? It will just add num1 with num2. So 5 plus 10 equal to 15 will be stored into the result field. So if I do F10 and see the result value, you can see the result is 15. And we are just displaying that result field using the DSPLY opcode. Here we are not specifying the factor 1 value, but in this case, the result will be stored into the num2 value. So again, 5 and 10 will be added as 15 and the value will be stored in num2 value. So if we see the value, that is 15 and we are just displaying it. Now come to the sub opcode. We have again declared two variables, num1 as 10, num2 as 5. So sub opcode will subtract the num1 value with num2. So 10 minus 5. So result field will give us the value as 5. So if we see the value of result, you can see the result is 5. And we are just displaying the result. It is also so similar, but in this case, the result will be stored into the num1 variable. So it will work something like this. Num1 equal to num1 minus num2. Result field will come first, then the factor 2 value will come. So again, 10 minus 5, result will be 5 and it will store in num1 variable. So if I press F10 and see the value of num1, you can see the 5 is here and we are just displaying the result. The next is multi-opcode to multiply any two numbers. So we have again declared our two variables, num1 as 10, num2 as 5. So we are just multiplying num1 with num2, storing the result into the result variable. So if I see the result now, it is 50. 10 into 5, 50. It has stored into the result variable. And we are just displaying it. Again, we are multiplying num1 value with num2, but this time we are storing the result in num2 field. So if we see the num2 field, it is 50. The next opcode is div opcode. So for div opcode, we have initialized the num1 value as 10, num2 value as 5. So what it will do? It will divide 10 by 5. So it will, if we divide the value of 10 by 5, it will give us the result as 2. And that 2 value will be stored into our result variable. So if we see our result value, the value is 2. And using DSPLY opcode, we are just displaying the result. Here also we are doing the same thing, but the result will be stored into the num1 variable. So it will work something like this, num1 equal to num1 divided by num2. So again, 10 divided by 5, the value is 2. That will be stored into the num1 variable. So if I press F10 here and see the value of num1, you can see value is 2. The next is move remainder opcode. So we have again specified num1 as 11, num2 as 5. So as I have previously mentioned, the MVR opcode will be used just after the div opcode. So first we are doing the div operation. So we are dividing the num1 value, that is 11, by num2 value, that is 5. So 11 divided by 5, we will get the remainder as 1. So that MVR opcode will move the remainder into the result field. So after the MVR opcode, if we see the value of result, you can see the remainder has been moved to the result variable as 1. And using the DSPLY opcode, we are just displaying the result. The last opcode is SQRT opcode, that is square root. So we have declared our num1 as 64, num2 as 81. So if I do F11, you can see num1 is 64, num2 is 81. So we are just using SQRT opcode. We are doing the square root for num1 and storing the result into the result field. So if I press F10 and see the result, so the square root of 64, that is 8, it is stored into the result variable. And again, we are just displaying the result using the DSPLY op. Again, we are doing the same thing. This time we are doing the square root of num2. The value of num2 is 81. So we will get the result as 9. So if we see the result, we can see the result is 9. And we are turning on the last record indicator. So it will just end the program and will come out of it. So after doing the debug, we have to do the end dbg. So we can end our debug. The two more opcode for arithmetic are zadd and zsub. So let's see what's zadd and zsub. Basically, zadd means zero add and zsub means zero sub. So how this opcodes can be used? So here we have declared our two variables num1 as 5, num2 as 10. What I'm doing here, I am adding zero value to our num2 variable. Our num2 variable is 10. So if we add 0 in 10, we will get 10 again, and we are storing the result into the result field. Similarly, zsub, we have declared num1 as 10, num2 as 5. So what zsub will do, it will subtract num2 from the 0 value. So 0 minus num2. So we will get the negative value, and that will be stored into the result field. So if I do here 0 minus 5, so minus 5 will be stored into the result field. So let's put this program also on debug. Just copy the program name. Press F9 to use your previously command. F4 here. Paste the program name here. Enter. Set the breakpoint. Come out of the debug and just call it. So we have set the num1 value as 5, num2 value as 10. So we will add 0 in num2 value, means 0 plus 10. So it will store that value of 10 in result field. So if we see the value of result, we can see the value is 10. Similarly, the G sub, we are subtracting the num2 value from 0. So 0 minus num2 value, that is 5. So it will give us as minus 5. So let's see, press F10 here, and see the result field. It will give you as value as minus 5. And we are turning on the last record indicator, so it will come out of the program and we'll do the end image. So these are some arithmetic opcodes. So now move forward with our next slide. That is string opcodes. So we have seen some arithmetic opcodes. Now we will move forward with our string opcodes. The first is scan. So what it will do? So whenever we have to find the first position of any particular character in a particular string, then we use the scan opcode. Sub-st, what sub-st will do? It will just get a substring from a big string. So you can, let's suppose you have a big name in a variable with first name and last name, and you just want to substring the first name from that string. So you can get that value using the sub-st opcode. Cat opcode, it will just add two strings. And check opcode, it will find the first non-occurrence character position in a string. Let's suppose the name is Jacob and you are finding the value of J. So in the first position, it will get the matching position, that is J equal to J. But the second position, we have the character as A. So it will give the index value of that A character. We will see this opcode with example as well. Check R opcode. So it is similar to the check opcode, but it will scan the string from right hand side. That is the only difference in the check and check R. Exit. Exit will be used to character translation. Like you have to convert the lowercase strings into a uppercase string, so we can use the exit opcode. And some other character translation also we can do using exit opcode. So let's see these opcodes with an example. So first we will see the scan and sub-st. So what we have declared here some variables, let string 1 and string 2. So string 1 is of 20 characters. String 2 also has value of 20 characters. The third variable we have declared as a result of 10 integer. And the second we have declared as result 1 of 20 characters. So we have declared some 4 variables here. Now come to the mainline calculation. What we are doing here, we are just initializing the value of string 1 as Jacob. So now my string 1 value will hold the result as Jacob. Now, how we will use the scan opcode? So use the scan opcode. In factor 1, you have to provide the character which you want to search in your string. So let's suppose I want to search the character A in my string, that is str1. So I will put my str1 string in factor 2. So I will get A at index number 2. That will be an integer number. So I will store that integer number into my integer result field, that is result. So it will store the result as 2 and will display it using the dsply opcode. The next thing is we can also specify the starting position where you want to start the scanning. Let's suppose I want to start the scanning from third position. So I want to search the character A from the third index. So if you see the name Jacob, so the third index is C. So it will start scanning the character A from the third index. And it will give the position of A. And that position will be stored into the result variable. And at last, we are displaying the result. The next is sub-st opcode. So we have initialized our string 2 as a full name, that is first name is Jacob and last name is Clark. So we have initialized our value as Jacob Clark in string 2. Now, how to use the sub-st opcode? You just have to mention sub-st in operation opcode. From which string you want a substring, you have to mention that string. So we want to substring from string 2. So I have mentioned str2 here. From which position I want to substring it. So I have given the index 7. So if we see the index 7 here, so this is 5, 6, and 7. So it will start substring from the 7th position. And it will took all the characters after it. So it will store the last name, that is Clark, into the result 1 field. And then we will display it by using the dsply opcode. Now, if you want that I want only 2 characters or 3 characters in my substrings. So in this case, what we are doing here, we are starting the substring from the 7th position and we are taking only 2 characters. So we have mentioned that value in factor 1. So it will now substring only C and L, that is 7th index and 8th index. And we will store that CL value in result 1 field. And finally, we are just displaying the result here. So let's see this program also in debug. So just copy the program name. Do the F4 on strdbg command that we have previously used. Just copy the program name here. Press enter. Set the breakpoint at line number 1. And just call the program. F10 to move forward in our debug. So what we are doing here, we have initialized our string 1 as Jacob. To see this value, we will put the cursor just below the string 1 variable and press F11. So you can see the value is Jacob. Now what we are doing, we are scanning the A character in our string 1. So where our A character is. So our A character resides in the second index. First is J, second is A. So result will be stored as index 2. So if I press F10 here and see the value of result, you can see the index 2 come as a result. So at the second position, our A character resides. Now, if we want to give the starting position of a scan, we can also give it by using a colon with the string 1. So what it will do now? It will start scanning from the third index, that is first, second, and third. So it will start scanning from C and will scan the character A. As there is no A after the third index, so it will give the position as 0. So if I press F10 here, it didn't find the character A, so it will give the result as 0. And finally, we are showing the result using the dsply opcode. So this is how the scan opcode will work. The next is sub-st opcode. So what we are doing here, we have initialized our string 2 with name Jacob Clark, that is first name and last name. So if we see the value is Jacob Clark. Now what we are doing, we are substring the value from the 7th index, that is this position. And we are what it will do, it will take all the characters after it, because we have not mentioned how many characters we want to take here. So it will store the value of Clark in result one field. So if I press F10 here, see the value of result one, you can see the Clark is displayed. Now what we are doing, we are giving how many characters we want in the substring. So if we see the value of string 2 again, what we are doing here, we are substring from the seventh index, and we are taking only two characters. We have mentioned two in a factor one field, so it will take only two characters, that is C and L, and that will be stored into our result one field. So if we see the value of result one, it is CL, and we'll display it, and will come out of the program. So we'll end the debug now. So this is how the scan and sub-st opcode will work. The next is cat opcode. So let's see cat opcode. So what cat opcode will do? It will just add string 1 with string 2. It will concatenate both these strings. So what we are doing here, our string 1 is Jacob, string 2 is Clark. So we have given here first name, and here we have given the last name. So I just want my first name and last name to be merged. So what I'm doing, I'm using the cat opcode here. In factor 1, I have given the string 1. Factor 2, I have given string 2. And the result field, I have given the result variable. And we are just displaying the result here. So let's put this program into debug, and let's see how this works. Just copy the program name, paste on strdbg, press enter, set the breakpoint at line number 1, come out of it, and just call it. Press F10 to move forward. So we have given the value of string 1 as Jacob. Press F11 to see the value. String 2 value as Clark. Now what we are doing, we are just concatenating, just adding the string 1 with the string 2, that is Jacob with Clark. So it will add Jacob with Clark, that will given as Jacob Clark, and that value will be stored into the result 1 field. So if we see the value of result 1 now, you can see Jacob and Clark. The remaining spaces, because of we have mentioned the string as 20 characters, so it is having the some blank spaces here, and we are just displaying the result here. So we are turning the last record indicator here, so it will come out of the program. Let's do the NDBG. The next is check and check R. So we have declared some variables here, string 1 with 20 characters, string 2 with 20 characters, and some result fields. So now we are storing the string 1 value as Jacob and string 2 as Clark. Now what we are doing, what check opcode will do first? It will just find the first non-occurrence character's position. So if I search J character in my string 1, so at first index, we will find the exact same result. So it will move forward. The second, it will find the character as A. So it is the non-character's position. So it will give the position of characters A, that is index number 2, and will store the result into the result field. So for it, you have to use the check opcode in operation opcode. In factor 1, which character you want to search. In factor 2, which string you want to perform the operation. And using the DSPLY opcode, we are just displaying the result. The next is check R opcode. So what we are doing, we are finding the blank space position in string 1. So what is our string 1? That is Jacob. It is of 20 characters, so it may have some spaces after it. So we'll start from the 20th position. So it will start scanning from right hand side. So it will find spaces here. Then at 5th index, it will find B. That will not match with the space. So it will return the index value of B. That is 5. If you search the index 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it will return the result as 5. And that result will be stored into our result variable. And we are just displaying it using DSPLY opcode. So let's put this program also in debug. Just copy the program and put into a debug mode. Set the breakpoint, and we are just calling it. Press F10 to move forward. So you can see our string 1 is now set as Jacob. Now we are using the check opcode to find the non-character's position. So at the first index, it will find the same character. In the second, it will find the non-occurrence character. So it will give the index value of A, that is 2, and that will be stored into the result variable. So if we see the value of result variable here, that is 2. Now we are using the check R opcode. What check R opcode will do? It is similar to the check, but will start scanning from right hand side. As we have mentioned, check R. So it will start scanning from right hand side. So if we see the value of string 1 here, we have some spaces. So it will start scanning from 20th position. So it will find the first non-occurrence value at index number 5, because at index number 5, we have the character as B, which are not matching with the space. So it will give the index of B, that is 5, and the result will be stored into the result variable. So if we see the result, so it is 5, and we are displaying it. This is how check and check R opcode will work. We will do the NDBG. The next is move and move L opcode. So what we are doing here, we have just initialized our string 1 with value as Jacob. Result 1 currently is blanks. We have not stored any value yet here. So string 1 value has Jacob. So what move will do? It will move the value of Jacob from right hand side into the result field. And what move L opcode will do? It will just move the string 2 value, that is CLA, into string 1, starting from left hand side, because we have mentioned here move L. So what value is our string 1? So our string 1 value is Jacob. So if you see, our string 1 value is Jacob. What we are doing here, we are moving the string 2 value from left hand side, because we have used move L. So it will start replacing from the left hand side to C, L, and A. So it will replace first 3 characters of Jacob and will store the result as CLAOB into a string 1 and will display it. So this is how move and move L opcode will work. So let's put this program also on debug mode. Just copy the program and put this program onto debug. Set the breakpoint and come out of it and just call it. Press F10. So you can see we have mentioned the string 1 as Jacob and result 1 is. So it will move the Jacob value at right hand side. So if we see the value of result 1 here, you can see the value stored from the right hand side. There is some spaces also present in string 1. And we are just displaying the result using DSPLY opcode. The next is move L opcode to move the character from left hand side position. So currently our string 1 holds the result is Jacob. String 2 hold the result as C, L, and A. So what this will do, it will start replacing from left hand side. So it will replace first 3 characters of Jacob, that is J, A, and C, with string 2 characters, that is C, L, and A. So it will become C, L, A, O, B, and will store the result into string 1. So if we see the value of string 1 now, that is C, L, A, O, B. So this is how move and move L opcode will work. We will debug here. The next string opcode is accelerate opcode. So what is the definition of accelerate opcode? Basically, it just convert character to character. So it will use to character translation. So if you see here, I have defined one string here that is of 26 characters. I have mentioned some lowercase from A to Z and uppercase from capital A to capital Z. So if I want accelerate to convert my lowercase to uppercase, so what it will do, it will just replace small a with capital A. Let's suppose I have given B at the first index. So it will replace the first index value of lowercase with the first index of the uppercase. So in the first index, I have small a. In uppercase, I have capital A. So first index will be replaced by this first index. So how to use it? First, what we are doing, we have mentioned our string 1 as Jacob in small characters, Jacob, all in small characters. What I am doing here, Let me open it in edit mode. Press F4 here. So I'm using accelerate opcode in operation. I want to convert my lowercase to the uppercase. The first index of lowercase will be replaced by first index of uppercase. Similarly, second index of lowercase will be replaced by second index of uppercase. And which string we want to convert? We have to mention in factor 2. And the result will be stored into the result1 field. So in our case, J that is on this index will be replaced by capital J. Small a that is on first index will be converted by uppercase first index that is capital A. So similarly, the Jacob will be converted into the capital letters. Then the result will be stored into the result1 field. In line number 35, what I am doing here, I am just replacing the lowercase value with some numeric values. Let's suppose the J index at this position. So if we look at the index number of J, it is 11. So it will just replace the 11th index with num1's 11th index, that is 9. So J will be replaced by 9, A will be replaced by 0, and similarly, the whole string will be replaced. And the result will be stored into the result1 field. Let's see how this accelerate opcode will work. Let's put this program also on debug. Just paste the program name, set the breakpoint, and come out of it. And now just call it. Press F10 to move forward. So currently our string 1 is small letters, that is JACOB. Now if I see the result value, you can see all the lowercase has been converted into the uppercase. The next, what we are doing, we are converting the lowercase value with some numeric values. So the first index of A will be replaced by the num variable's first index, that is 0. The J will be replaced by its 11th index, that is 9. Similarly, the whole string will be converted. So if we see the value of result1 now, you can see it has given some string numeric values 90241. So this is how the accelerate opcode will work. It will just transfer the character to character translation. We are just displaying the result using the DSPLY opcode, setting on the last record indicator. So we will come out of the program and we will do NDBG here. So these are some string opcodes. Let's move forward with our PPT. The next slide, that is subroutine. So what is subroutine? The subroutine is a set of instruction within a program that perform a specific task and can be called from any point in the program. So let's suppose you have one block of code in your program and that is being used various times in your program. So instead of writing it many times again and again, we can make a subroutine. So whenever you want to perform that block of code, we can simply call that subroutine and it will perform that task for you. So there are 5 opcodes for subroutines. First is begin subroutine to begin the subroutine, execute subroutine to execute a particular subroutine, end subroutine to end that particular subroutine. Initialize subroutine is something that if you use the initialize subroutine, your program will always start where you have declared your initialize subroutine. If your initialize subroutine is declared at line number 100, then your program will start from line number 100 itself. So this is an useful case of initialize subroutine. And the leave subroutine to leave the subroutine. If you want to come out of the subroutine in any case, so you can use the leave SR opcode. So let's see these opcodes with an example. So first we'll see execute subroutine, begin subroutine, end subroutine, and leave subroutine. So what we are doing here, we have initialized our string 1 with name Jacob, string 2 with name Clark. Now at line number 32, what I'm doing, I am executing the subroutine. So I have to mention EXSR to execute any subroutine. And factor 2, I have to give a particular name of a subroutine. Which subroutine I want to execute. So I have given the subroutine name as reset value. So whenever the program pointer will come at line number 32, the program will directly jump to the reset value subroutine that is mentioned at line number 38. And to start this subroutine, we have to use BEGSR opcode. And at factor 1, you have to give the same name of the subroutine. So what we are doing here, we are checking if our string one value is blanks. So give the result one field as name is blank and leave the subroutine. So what leave subroutine will do? It will just come out of this subroutine. It will not perform the below lines. Now, if our string one value is not blank, so it will go to the else condition and will just concatenate the two string, that is string one with string two, and will store the result into the result one field. So after performing this subroutine, the pointer will again come to the line number 33, just after the line number 32. And now it will move forward and will display the result. So let's see this subroutine in a debug mode for a better explanation. Just copy the program name, paste the program name here, set the breakpoint, and just call it. Press F10. So we have mentioned both the string one as Jacob, string two as Clark. Now what we are doing, we are executing a particular subroutine, that is reset value. So now the program will directly go to the that subroutine reset value. It will not perform the line number 34. It will first perform the line number 38. So if I press F10 here, you can see our pointer come to the begin subroutine. So now our subroutine will start from here. So what we are doing here, we are checking if our string one value is blank or not. So if we see our string one value, it is Jacob. So the value of string one is not blank. So it will not go into the if condition, it will go to the else condition because this condition failed. Now what we are doing, we are using the cat opcode that we have previously discussed. So it will just add string one with string two. What our string one value is Jacob, string two value is Clark. So it will add both the strings and store the result into the result one field. And the end subroutine means our subroutine is ended here. Now the cursor will come after our executed subroutine part and will display the result as Jacob Clark. So it will edit both the first name and last name. Let me call this program again. This time what I will do, as you can see, I have mentioned the string one again as Jacob, string two as Clark. Now I am executing the subroutine reset value. Now what I will do, I will just hard coded the string one value as blank. So to do that, we can use the eval opcode. Just press enter. You can see now the string one value is blank. So now it will go inside this if condition. So what now we'll do, we will just put the result one as name is blank. And what leave subroutine will do, it will just come out of the subroutine. It will not perform the below operation. You can see it just come out of it and the subroutine is ended. And we are just displaying the result as name is blank and come out of the program. So this is how this subroutine works. Just end the debug here. The next subroutine is initialize subroutine. Let's see how it works. So we have declared our initialize subroutine at line number 33. Our main line calculation, our main program start from line number 28. But when we will call this program, the pointer will not start from the line number 28 because we have declared here initialize subroutine. So when you will call this program, so it will start from line number 33 first. So how to use initialize subroutine? In operation code, you have to mention the begin subroutine. In factor one, you have to give star INGSR. That means initialize subroutine. So the program will always start from line number 33, where the initialize subroutine is declared. So we will just set the value of string one as Jacob, string two value as Clark, and the subroutine will be ended. Now the pointer will go to the first line, that is line number 28. And then we will just add string one with string two, that is Jacob with Clark. And our result will be stored as Jacob Clark in result one field. And at last, we are just displaying the result. So let's see this also in debug mode. Just copy the program name, paste the program name here. set the breakpoint at line number 1, and just simply call it. So you can see when I press F10, the program started from line number 33, where my initialized subroutine is declared. So this is the use case of initialized subroutine. So what we are doing here, we are giving the string 1 value as Jacob, string 2 value as Clark, and we'll just come out of the subroutine and just adding the string 1 with string 2 using the cat opcode, and the story result into the result 1 field. So if we see the result now, so it is so as Jacob Clark, and we are just displaying the result. It will come out of the program. So these are some subroutine of course. Moving forward with our slide, the next is some opcode extenders. So we have 3 extenders here: half adjust to round off any result. So it will be useful in our arithmetic opcodes. So we can use add h, sub h, eval h, z add h, z sub h. So it will just round off your result. To handle the error in the program, we can use the e extender with scan e, sub st. Also to handle the error, we can also use the monitor block opcode. We will see the example of monitor block as well. And the last is padding. Let's suppose you have one 10 character string and you are moving the 5 character string into it. So the remaining 5 characters will be padded by space. So the P opcode is used with move and move LP. So let's see all these extenders with an example. First, we will see the half adjust. So what I have done here, I have declared one numeric one value of 5 integer with 3 decimal position, num2 also with 5 integers and 3 decimal position. But in the result field, I am just mentioned the 1 decimal position with 10 integers. So line number 29, I have initialized the value of num1 as 5.535, num2 as 10.368. Now what I'm doing here, I'm using the half adjust with z add. So what z add will do, as we have previously discussed, z add will add 0 with num2 variable. So 0 will be added with num2. That will result in 10.368. And we are moving this value into the result field, which have only the 1 decimal position. So instead of storing 10.3, it will just half adjust its value to 10.4 because 6 is greater than 5. So it will just round off the result and the result will be stored into the result variable. Same goes with z sub h. We will subtract 0 with our num2 value. So z sub means subtract the value from 0. So our num2 value is 5.968. So result will be minus 5.968. But our result field has only one decimal position. So it will just round off the result as 5.926 minus 6.0 because we have 6 value here. So it will just round off this subtraction and will store the result into the result field. Let's see this program into debug mode. File it, copy the program and put this into the debug. Set the breakpoint line number 1 and just call it. So we have declared num1 as 5.535, num2 as 10.368. Now what zadd will do? First, it will add 0 with num2. So the result will be 10.368. Now the result field has only 1 decimal position. So it should restore as 10.3. But we have used half adjust. So it will just convert this 3 to 4 and will round off the result. So if I press F10 here and see the result value here, you can see 10.4 and we are just displaying it. Similarly, we have initialized num1 as 10.368, num2 as 5.986. And what we are doing, we are subtracting num2 from 0, that is 5.986. And that will give us result as minus 5.986. So after rounding off because we are using the half adjust, it will become minus 6.0. So that's minus 6.0 will be stored into the result field. So if I press F10, you can see the result as minus 6.0, and we are just displaying the result. So this is how the half adjust will work. The next extended is, let's move forward with our E extended, that is error handling. So what we are doing here, we have declared our string one as Jacob. It is of 5 characters. So we have 5 characters value here, Jacob. I have declared one index value here of 2 integer, and I am setting the index as 6. Now what scan opcode will do? It will just scan the character A in our string 1. But what we have done here, we have mentioned the starting position as index. And what is our index value? Our index value is 6. So it will start scanning from the 6th position. But as you can see, our string 1 is only of 5 characters. So this scan opcode will end it in an error because we are starting from 6th position, but our string is only of 5. So to handle this error, we have provided the E extended here. So using if opcode, we will trap that error. If %error, we'll just display the error here. Else, we will display the result. The same can be used with sub-st. In sub-st, we have declared string2 as Jacob Clark of 11 character, but we have mentioned the index as 12. So what sub-st will do? It will substring from string2 starting from index position, that is 12th position. But our string2 is only of 11 characters. So it will also end it in an error. So for that, we have used E extended here as well. So if it is ended in error, we will display the message as error. Else, we will display the result of substring. So this is how the E extended error handling will work. So let's put this program into the debug. Just copy the program and put into the debug mode. And just call it. You can see our string one is Jacob. It is of only of 5 characters. There is no space after B. Our index is 6. So it will start scanning the character A from the 6th position. So it will end into an error. So if %error, we will display the message as error. Similar with sub-ste, we have declared our string 2 that is of 11 character with name as Jacob Clark. Define the index with value 12. Now what we are doing here, we are substring the string 2 starting from the 12th position. So if we see the 12th position here, it is 5 here, 6th here, and 11th here. So we have come to the 11th index. So 12th index is not there in string 2. It is only of 11 characters. So this will also will fail into the error. So if I press F10, it will just display the message error and will come out of it. So this is how using the E extender, we can handle the errors in our program. Just end the DBG. So there is one more thing, that is monitor block, for which we can use for the error handling. So if we see the monitor block example for error handling, the example is the same string, the same index. We are scanning the character A from the 6th index, which is not present in our string 1. But this time we are not using the E extender. What I have used the monitor block just before my operation. So whenever you want to use monitor block, you have to mention it just before your opcode where you want to check the error. And after that, you have to mention the on error. Instead of if %error, you have to mention on error. So if it will fail in error, so it will display the message as error. And similarly to if and if, we have to mention the and mon here. And similarly, I am using monitor block in sub-st without the E extender. So let's put this program again into the debug and see how monitor block will work. Just paste the program here, set the breakpoint, and call it. You can see we have mentioned the string one that is of 5 characters here. Index value is 6. So scan opcode will again try to scan the character A from the 6th position, but will end in error because string one is only of 5 characters. So what monitor block will do? It will fetch the error. So it will go to the on error and will display the message as error. So using monitor block also you can handle the error. So in this case, you don't have to use the E extender. Similar goes with subst. We are trying to substring from the 12th index, but our string 2 is only of 11 characters. So it will also end in error. So it will go to on error and will display the message as error. And we are doing end mon and it will come out of the program. So this is how we can handle the error using monitor block. The E extender has one more opcode that we can use, that is test. So let's see the test opcode as well. What I'm doing here, I have declared one variable for date in ISO format. So I have initialized the value of date in ISO format, that is YMD, and then in USA format. And third variable I have declared as time. It is USA time zone. And the result one as 40 characters. So what I'm doing here, if I want to check the date, I have to use test D opcode. And if I want to handle the error, I have to use E extended with D. D is for date and E is for the error handling. So if I prompt this with pressing F4, you can see I am testing the date and also handling the error with E. I am checking my date field that is in ISO format with ISO format. So if the date will match with the ISO format, it will not go into the error and will display the message as valid date. If the date is not valid, we are just displaying the message as invalid date. Similarly, what we are doing here, we are validating the time. To validate the time, we will use test opcode with T, and to handle the error, we are using E extender. So what we are doing here, we are checking our time in USA format. In which format you have to check, you have to put that into the factor one, and the result, you have to put your time variable. So if it is ended in error, it will give you invalid time, else it will give you valid time. So let's put this program into debug. Just copy the program, put into the debug mode. Set the breakpoint at line number 1 and just call it. So if I check my date, it is currently in ISO format already, so it will not end it in an error. So it will go to the else part. It will give the result as valid date, and we are just displaying it. So result one is valid date. Here we are checking our time in USA format. So currently my time is already in USA format. So it will also not end it in error. It will give us a valid time. So this is how we can check date and time using date test DE and test ET. Let's put NDBG here. So our next extended is P, that is padding, that is used with move and move L opcode. So what we are doing here, we have initialized our string 1 with Jacob, string 2 with Himanshu. So what move opcode will do first? It will just move the first string at the right hand side of string 2. So our string 2 value as Himanshu, and it will replace string. What move opcode will do? It will just put this Jacob at from the right hand side. So it will put the Jacob from right hand side, something like this. Now the remaining 3 spaces, if you want to pad it, you have to use P extender. So what this P extender will do, it will just remove the first 3 character it will replace it with the spaces and give you result as Jacob. Similarly goes with move LP. What we are doing here, we are moving the string 2 in the left hand side of string 1. So our string 1 is Jacob. We are moving string 2, that is CLA, using move L. So it will replace from left hand side. The remaining 2, we are padding it using the P extended. So it will just remove it with the spaces. So result, that is CLA, will be stored in string 1. And we are just showing the result here. So let's put this program also in debug. Just put the program name, set the breakpoint, and call it. String 1 is Jacob, string 2 is Himanshu. So we are just, first we will see the move opcode, how move opcode will work. So our value in string 1 is Himanshu, string 2 in Himanshu, and we are just replacing the string 1 with it, and we are replacing from right hand side because move opcode will replace the characters from right hand side. So it will just replace something like this. And what P extended will do, it will replace the remaining characters with the spaces. So now the string 2 will hold the result as Jacob. So if we see the value of string 2 here, it will come as Jacob. The first 3 spaces are replaced by spaces. Similarly, the move L opcode, what we are doing, we are replacing the Jacob with string 2, that is CLA, but we are replacing it from left hand side because that is move L opcode is here. So CL and A. And the P padding will replace the remaining characters with the spaces and will store the result into the string 1, that is CLA. So if I press F10 here and see the value of string 1, it will come as CLA. The remaining 2 is replaced by spaces. So this is how the P opcode will work. Moving forward with our next slide. It is our last slide, that is other useful code. Clear, reset, leave, and eval. Clear is used to clear the value of variable. The reset to reset the value of any variable to its default value. Leave, it is similar to leave SR. It will just come out of the loop. And eval, we have recently used to initialize the value of a variable. So let's see these opcodes also with an example. So you can see I have declared one string here and I have initialized it with the value as black. And I am just displaying the value first. So it will display the value as black. Now what I'm doing, I am changing the value of string 1 using the eval opcode with Jacob. Now I am using the reset opcode. So whenever you will use reset opcode, you have to mention your variable in result field. So what reset opcode will do? It will just reset the value of string 1. Initially, what we have initialized the value of string 1 is black, but we have changed it with Jacob. So again, if we want to reset it, we will just use the reset opcode. Using this, the string 1 value will again become the black as its original value, and we are just displaying it. And the clear opcode, in the clear opcode, you also have to use your string into the result field or your variable in the result field. So what clear opcode will do? It will just clear that string or clear that variable, whatever you will use. So it will just clear our str1 string 1 and will show result as blank. So if we put this program into debug mode, set the breakpoint at line number 1 and just call it. So you can see first our string 1 value is black because we have initialized is at as a black. So it will show as black. Now I have changed the value of string 1 using eval opcode as Jacob. So it will now hold the result as Jacob. Now using the reset opcode, I am again resetting the value of string 1 that we have initially initialized as black. So currently the string 1 value is Jacob. If I press F10 here, now see the value of string 1, it will again become as black. And clear opcode, it will just clear the value of string 1. Currently, it holds the value as black. If I press F10 here and again see the value of string 1, it will clear it. So this is how eval, clear, and reset opcode will work. We'll just do the NDBG. So yeah, this is all about today's opcode session. If you have any question, you can put your question in Q&A section. To prompt, we will use F4 key. If you want to prompt any D and C spec, you can just press F4. You can put the cursor on that D and C spec and can press F4. That will prompt it. Compile time error will be occurred if you compile your program. And let's suppose we have the scan opcode in our case. I was using the index value, but instead of using index, I have put the sixth index, and my character was only of 5 characters. So it will not program will not allow you to compile it. It will throw you in compile time error. And instead of it, if I use the index variable here, so the index variable value is not defined during the compile time. It will be the value of index will come at the runtime. So the program will end it in the runtime error. So these are the difference between compile time error and runtime error. We have also shared the assignment link into the chat, so you can see your assignment and can complete it. So anyone have any more questions? Yeah, it will search both A, C, and O. Any more questions? So I can see there is no more questions in Q&A. If you want to ask any question, you can just put your query in Q&A and we can answer that. So there is no more questions. So I think we can wind up our session. You can see your assignment in the chat box. We have shared the links for that. Also, we have shared our IBM ebook link. So it will be very useful for your initial journey. So you can use that IBM ebook as well. And our session will be live on YouTube as well. So you can see the recording again if you want to see it. So I think we are on time. And as there is no more question, I think we can bind up today's session. So we will meet you on the next session. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a great day.